It was supposed to be an ordinary day at the park. Families enjoying the sun, kids laughing, and neighbors catching up. But then everything changed when a woman, later dubbed Karen, decided to take her frustration out on a family minding their own business. Her hurtful remarks and entitled behavior quickly drew attention, but what she didn't see coming was the twist that would turn the tables in a way no one expected. Stay tuned as this dramatic encounter unfolds, leading to a dose of instant karma that left everyone in the family. A young couple with their little daughter had just settled on a blanket near the playground. They were sharing snacks, laughing, and enjoying the peaceful afternoon. But Karen, seemingly triggered by their presence, marched over with an air of entitlement that could be felt from a mile away. She started making rude comments, questioning why they were there and accusing them of ruining the atmosphere. Other parkours noticed the escalating situation, unsure whether to intervene or just watch. The tension grew as Karen's voice grew louder, her words dripping with disdain. Then something unexpected happened that changed everything. Stunned, you won't want to miss this unforgettable moment. The couple tried to remain calm, politely asking Karen to leave them alone, but her outburst only intensified. People around the park started pulling out their phones, capturing the scene as it unfolded. The little girl clung to her mother, her wide eyes filled with confusion and fear. Karen, seemingly emboldened by the growing audience, accused the family of things that made no sense, her words becoming more nonsensical and harsh. A young man sitting nearby finally stood up, his expression a mix of disbelief and quiet determination. The crowd watched closely, sensing that this unexpected twist was about to shift everything. The young man approached calmly but firmly, addressing Karen in a way that silenced the murmurs of the growing crowd. He asked her why she was harassing the family, his tone controlled but filled with an edge of frustration. Karen, taken aback for a moment, shifted her focus to him, claiming she was just protecting the community. Her defensive words fell flat, especially as more witnesses started stepping forward, sharing what they had seen. Meanwhile, the couple quietly comforted their daughter, clearly shaken but staying composed. The energy in the park shifted as the crowd grew more involved, ready to hold Karen accountable for her actions. Karen's voice rose again, this time aimed at the young man, accusing him of meddling in things that don't concern him. Her words carried a sharp tone, but the crowd wasn't buying it anymore. People began calling her out, voicing their support for the family, and sharing their disbelief at her behavior. Karen, now flustered but unwilling to back down, tried to dismiss the growing dissent. Suddenly, one of the bystanders, a woman who had been recording everything, spoke up, revealing she knew the family and that Karen's accusations were baseless. The crowd leaned in closer, tensions reaching a boiling point as Karen's confident facade began to crack. Just as Karen opened her mouth to defend herself, a voice called out from the edge of the crowd. It was an older man, one of the park regulars, who revealed he'd seen Karen earlier in a heated argument with another family. He explained that she had stormed off angrily after being asked to stop yelling at their children. The revelation sent murmurs through the crowd, and Karen's face turned red as the weight of the situation began to press down on her. But before anyone could process what was happening, the sound of a police siren broke through the air, adding a whole new layer of tension. In a quiet Filipino neighborhood, where hard work and kindness shape the community, a humble mechanic named Carlo has earned respect for his skill and honesty. But one fateful afternoon, his life takes an unexpected turn. While working on a client's car outside his shop, Carlo is approached by a police officer with an air of authority and arrogance. The cop begins to question Carlo, but his tone quickly shifts from routine to harassment. Accusing Carlo of obstructing the road and challenging his right to work there, the officer clearly underestimates him. What the cop doesn't realize is that Carlo isn't just any mechanic. He's someone who values justice and integrity. As tension rises, a small crowd gathers, watching the exchange unfold. What happens next is something no one, especially the officer, saw coming. Stay tuned as this dramatic encounter takes a turn that leaves everyone stunned. Carlo wiped his hands on a rag, his face calm but his eyes sharp. He explained politely that he had been running his small roadside mechanic shop for years with no issues. The officer, however, wasn't interested in listening. He kept interrupting, raising his voice as he demanded to see permits and accused Carlo of illegally taking up space. Carlo's neighbors, loyal customers who had seen him work tirelessly to provide for his family, started to whisper among themselves. It was clear the officer wasn't just enforcing rules. He seemed intent on asserting power. But Carlo remained steady, refusing to be intimidated. What the officer didn't know was that Carlo had every document he needed to prove his right to be there. As the cop's demands grew louder, Carlo took a deep breath and reached for his folder of paperwork. The crowd leaned in, sensing that something big was about to happen. Carlo calmly handed over the folder, his hand steady despite the officer's glaring eyes. Inside were all the necessary permits, proof that his shop was fully legal and that he had complied with every requirement. But instead of backing down, the cop barely glanced at the documents and smirked. "These don't mean anything," he said dismissively, tossing the papers back at Carlo. The crowd, now larger, began murmuring louder, their frustration matching Carlo's growing anger. Among the onlookers was a young man holding up his phone, recording the entire incident. "This isn't right," someone whispered. Another neighbor, an elderly woman who had known Carlo since he was a boy, spoke up. "Leave him alone. He's an honest man." But the officer turned toward her with a sharp warning, silencing the crowd for a moment. Carlo knew he had to tread carefully. He wasn't just defending his livelihood, he was standing up for his dignity. Yet the officer's arrogance only seemed to grow. Little did he know, the tables were about to turn in a way no one expected. Carlo bent down to gather his scattered papers, his jaw tightening as he felt the weight of the officer's disdain and the crowd's expectant eyes on him. The man with the phone stepped forward, his camera still rolling. "Sir, is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. The officer shot him a glare, barking, "Stay out of this. This doesn't concern you." But the young man didn't back down, keeping the camera steady. By now, the murmurs in the crowd had turned into low but steady calls for fairness. Carlo stood up straight, meeting the officer's gaze with quiet determination. "I've shown you my permits." "I've done nothing wrong," he said, his voice measured but strong. The officer, visibly flustered, raised his hand to silence him. But just then, a car pulled up to the scene, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. The officer stammered, trying to regain his composure. "Just handling a situation, sir. This man," he gestured toward Carlo, "is obstructing the road and operating without proper permits." But before he could finish, the man raised a hand to stop him. "I hope you're not accusing him without evidence," he said firmly. He turned to Carlo. "May I see your documents?" Carlo hesitated for a moment, unsure of who this man was, but something about him felt trustworthy. He handed over the folder, and the man reviewed it carefully, nodding as he read. Then, to everyone's surprise, he looked back at the officer with a cold expression. "Do you realize you're harassing someone